I had to unmute myself. Good evening and welcome to Conversations with Michael Carson. I'm your host, Michael Carson. It is great to be with you guys again. We are back at it. We took a little break at the end of the year for the my birthday, Christmas holiday, New Year's, all of that stuff, and we are back at it. And we have a great show for you tonight. If you are watching us via Facebook, make sure that you comment, like, share that we're on the air. If you're watching us via YouTube, make sure that you comment and you subscribe and hit that bell so that you'll know when the next show is. So tonight's show is one of the shows I've been wanting to do for a while. It's on voting. It's important that we talk about voting, especially given this climate that we're in, and especially because it's another election year. Most people don't know it's usually an election year every year, but people are just busy. There are things happening in the world. COVID's still around. We have the Omicron variant, and we don't know what other variants or what other things are coming down the pike. The economy, inflation is up. So people are engaged in a lot of things, and oftentimes politics, voting, who they're voting for is not something that they pay attention to. But we just want to highlight some things tonight. I have a very special guest with me tonight. Um, this brother, I've known, how long have I known you, Lyndon?
I think going on 4 years now.
Yeah, going on 4 years. And I've come to respect what this brother does and how he is in the community, getting things done, making sure that people are engaged. So my special guest tonight is Lyndon Waller, and he is the Civic Engagement Co-Chair for Black Male Initiative. Both of us are part of BMI, and so I wanted to have him on tonight to talk about voting and to share, just to share some things, share his perspective, and make sure that we get an understanding of what's going on here in Georgia, and to also find out how we can engage. So without further ado, Lyndon, tell the people who you are and a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lyndon Waller, Civic Engagement Co-Chair and also co-founder for Black Male Initiative Georgia. Like Michael said earlier, we've known each other going on 4 years now, but it's been a pleasure to work with Michael. We've done a lot of good work in the community. I think the biggest thing that we've done so far is registering voters inside of Fulton County Jail. So just continuing on with some of those missions and making sure that we're doing the best for our community.
So a little bit, tell
Glad to
us
be
about
here.
the. I mean, one of the things. So let me share with the audience. I did not have a weapon. In Georgia, it's like I don't have. It's like when you're in when you're in Rome, do as the Romans do. So I'm now a gun owner, and that freaked me out. But I talked to Lyndon. He and the other men in BMI are trying to pull me on, alongside with, to be an avid gun owner,
Right.
multiple guns. I don't know about that. I got to take it a little bit, slow. But he hooked me up with a licensed dealer who was a pleasure to work with, and I'm going to miss him. I think he'd have moved on out of the community. But
Yeah.
this guy was legit. So tell us a little bit about the work that you do as a civic engagement co-chair. Well, let's start out talking a little bit about BMI because everyone doesn't necessarily know what Black Military Georgia is. Every time I go out with my hoodie, every Tuesday hiking, people look at it like, what does that mean? So I get an opportunity to share with them what BMI Georgia is. Talk to
Okay.
us about that.
Yeah, so Black Male Initiative started as a signature program from the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation that is led by Melanie Campbell out of DC. And so a few years back, John, myself, and a few other brothers, we were tired of everyone saying, oh, black men need to do more. Y'all aren't showing up. Y'all aren't matching the effort from black women in the state. If y'all did what y'all supposed to be doing, we'll be in a much better position. So since John and I were involved with the national BMI, we decided to say, hey, it's already an existing brand. Let's do something with it locally where we can actually control day-to-day output. So we started back in 2018.
Mhm.
Started small with a survey, just getting, what did black men feel like was being represented or was it being represented by their legislators, and what was their thoughts and ideas of how to better represent them and what do they want to see. So that's what we started with. But since then, we've been growing, doing a lot of door-to-door canvassing, direct actions, just trying to touch on all aspects which affect Black families, Black men, and Black communities. So, and that's what we've
Yeah,
been doing.
so we are 501c3. We got our
Yes.
501c3. What was it? Was it last year? About
I
a
want to
year?
say 2019, early
2019.
2019. Yeah.
Okay, so we have our 501c3, and people are able to give, to give to the organization. And you and John are doing. I want to say this publicly, that you guys are doing a yeoman's job, getting donations in, and making sure that things for Black Male Initiative Georgia is set up in such a way that's excellent, and bringing the donations in, because you guys are, you're doing the work. So I really appreciate that. So how did you get engaged? I mean, how did you get involved in this civic engagement piece and in this space? I mean, is this something you've like, because you also have a job doing this.
Right.
So how did you get involved in this space?
So I got involved in this space by my internship with the People's Agenda. So during my last year of my master's program, I needed an internship to graduate. So I searched high
Mm,
and low. Nobody wanted to take me on, but Reverend Milner and Miss Helen Butler, who's the executive director of People's Agenda, they brought me on. So I've been with People's Agenda going on 9 years now. I started, I want to say
wow,
March 2013. Yeah. So we've
wow.
grown just from Helen and her excellent
Mhm.
leadership and her vision to having 7 offices across the state of Georgia, registering thousands of voters, contacting hundreds of thousands, if not millions of voters, making sure that they're engaged in the political process. So
Yeah. So why should people vote? Vote.
oh, voting is the right that protects all of your other rights. I mean, we're just talking about guns, but guns ain't going to save you from everything. So you have to make sure that you're involved in the political process, making sure that you're voting for people who are actually representing your interests and doing what's best for you and your community. So if you're not voting, you really don't matter. I know
Mhm.
you know this very well, Michael.
Yeah.
Uh, everything everything that impacts us falls back on voting and voting rights and laws. So if you're not having that input in that system, you really don't count.
So when you came out of college, and when you were studying for your master's,
Mhm.
was the concentration in civic engagement, was it around what was it around?
No, it was public management. So I literally fell into this space, but fell in love with it. So, yeah, I did not picture myself being a programs director for a civic engagement, civil rights organization. So, no, I did not picture myself here.
So here in Georgia, there are a few ways that we can vote. So
Mhm.
if people are watching this now, because Georgia and other states are held up as the poster child of, we're
Voter suppression.
backwards,
Hmm.
right? We don't know what we're doing, blah blah blah. But there's actually some tools in place for people to vote, to register to vote. So talk about those tools, and then how you, through your work, with your job and your work with BMI, are engaging people to register and vote.
Yeah, so in Georgia, you can register a few different ways. Of course, you have your paper applications.
Mhm.
Anybody can register as long as they're a citizen. Georgia's felon reenfranchisement laws are sort of different. As long as you fully completed your sentence, no longer on probation or parole, you're able to regain your voting rights and just submit a voter registration application and vote. Also, you can register through the DMV. It used to be a situation where you had to opt in. So whenever you got your driver's license changed, they'll ask you if you wanted to update or register to vote. Now it's an opting out process. So you automatically update your information when you go to the DMV. And instead of them asking you if you want to update your information, um, you will have to request for them not to update your information. So if you've gotten a new driver's license within the past couple of years, it's a high chance that even if you didn't update your voter registration through an application, you've been updated through the DMV system. And then also, of course, you can use national voter registration forms to register, but mainly online voter registration, Georgia paper applications, and registering through the DMV.
And there's so when you hear that, you would think that the only way we can register here in the state is you got to get paper. You got to fill out a paper to vote, but that's not necessarily true. And it's important for people to know that because oftentimes they might think, they might not know that DMV piece.
Right.
Because, I know when I've updated, I updated my status and they didn't even, and like you said, they even asked me.
Yeah, they automatically
they
do it.
automatically update it. And that's
Hmm.
important to know. But we also know that there were a lot of people that were purged from the voter rolls.
Right.
Um, for political reasons, some believe. Supposedly, they wanted to make sure that people weren't voting who shouldn't be voting. But talk a little bit about your experience and what that's been like, educating people about that, and going up against that as you're trying to register people to vote. They're taking people off the voter rolls.
Yeah, so it seems like every year between 300,000 and 400,000 people are purged from the voting rolls. And what's supposed to happen is if you don't vote in three election cycles where there's a federal candidate, so somebody who's either running for Senate, U.S. Senate, Congress, or, president, if you don't vote in those elections, then you have three cycles and then you'll eventually be placed on an inactive list and then purged the following election. However, we've seen and we've had in my day job, the People's Agenda, we've had lawsuits where we found people who are erroneously purged from the rolls. And so,
Mhm.
we have to challenge those because, if you just registered last year, there's no reason for you to be purged from the rolls. So we saw a lot of that happening back in 2020
Mhm.
when the state sent out, unsolicited, they just sent out the absentee ballot applications where someone might have a different mailing address than their residential address and they send it to their residential address and the mail bounces. Then the state took that as, oh, this person isn't supposed to be registered at this location. We need to remove them from the rolls. So situations like that is critical. And we saw back in 2020, the presidential race in Georgia was decided by less than 12,000 votes. So if you have, 2021, and we know it's going to happen again this year, 200, 300,000 people being removed from the rolls, that's a lot of ground that you're trying to make sure it doesn't expand too much. So that way we have fair and equal elections in the state.
So one of the things that I'm focused on even more so this year is civic literacy. There are a lot of people who have been registered to vote, but to your point, they've been taken off the voter rolls, and some people just don't vote because they're tired of politicians or whatever the case, or they feel like nothing's happening. So um, is in doing any of the work that you do, is it around civic literacy, and how do you get people engaged to be engaged about the people they're going to vote for? Because it's not enough just to register to vote, but it's also about understanding who the not the candidates are, not necessarily, but also the people that have been in office, to see if they're actually serving your needs. Oftentimes people come out in mass for presidential elections, but this cycle, this election year is a midterm, and there's some special elections, and you have the governor's race. But these elections are just as important. So how do you educate people about how they should be engaged in the voter process, not just registering, but learning about the people they're voting for?
Yeah, I think once people know exactly how it impacts them, that sort of changes their perception of voting overall. I know oftentimes when I would do voter registration at MARTA stations, people would be like, "Oh, the government doesn't affect me. They're not doing anything for me." And I'm like, "You're using public transit right now. This is the person, or people are elected to determining how much funding that this system gets that impacts where you can go off of your $1.75 or $2.25, whatever the rate is now." So just relating that back to them, like, hey, breaking it down to the easiest, simplest level so that someone can understand. Do you have someone in your family? Do you have a kid who's in school? Are you happy with how those schools are being managed? Do you feel as if your kid is getting the best quality of education that's going to put them in a position to succeed later on in life? So once you relate it back down to the simplest levels, then you can have a conversation and build that up and build up a rapport with that individual. But a lot of people are disgruntled. They're upset. They see what's going on in Washington. They see that their bottom line isn't changing. Price of everything has gone up. Their wages haven't gone up. Still got student loans creeping down their necks. So it's hard keeping people positive and putting a positive spin on it while also being realistic because we know what's impacting our brothers and our families, and we don't want to put we don't want to lie to anybody. We want to keep it real because that's the best way that you're going to have a lasting relationship with someone and actually make them impact the system positively.
So I want to transition to two things.
Mhm.
One, I don't want to spend too much time on. The other one, I want to spend a little bit more time on. The one you touched on earlier when you talked about us going into Fulton County jail to register people to vote. Most people don't know that you can vote if you're in Fulton
Mhm.
County jail or in county jail. It's once you are, sentenced, and if you're under supervision or probation, which in Georgia a lot of people are. There's a high number of citizens
I
here in
think
the
we
state.
have the highest rate in the country of
Yeah,
people under. Yeah.
on the criminals. Yeah, and in some cases, as when I looked it up, it's higher than some countries where they don't even have that many people under under supervision.
Mhm.
What are some of the ways that we can combat that? Is it just through registering more people in jail to vote, engaging them? What are have you thought given that any thought recently? How we can engage people, and maybe even engage legislators to help them to see, hey, we got to change some of these laws.
Yeah, so a lot of work is being done on the legislative side, trying to,
Mm,
do away with any restrictions on felon voting. But as soon as
mm,
someone gets out of prison, then being able to register to vote. But that takes time. We know the political climate and the state that we're in. So
yeah,
maybe once things change over the next couple months, couple of years, we'll see some ground being moved on that. But on the other side of it, it's just reaching people wherever they are. So if you're in jail for a misdemeanor or you're waiting in trial for something, we want to make sure that you're still involved because every vote and every voice counts. So if we're reaching people wherever they are and making sure that they're able to turn in ballots and actually vote, where their heart desires, I think that that's going to go a long way. And like you said, it's back to the education. It's not just having them vote, but actually them understanding the process and how it impacts them.
yeah. The other thing I wanted to touch on is this whole this narrative around black men don't vote, and then women are outpacing black men, and if it weren't for black women are saving democracy because black men aren't voting, and particularly here in Georgia, there was a lot. I heard a lot. There was a narrative on television, a lot on a lot of these shows that that if it weren't for black men, I mean black women only, then democracy wouldn't have been saved. So the question is really not to pit one gender against the other, but just to
Mhm.
kind of shed some light on what the actual numbers were, what the voting numbers were, and what have we found is because we've introduced a survey before, and we've gone out and done some work around black male engagement with respect to voting. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so both of the organizations I represent, we're 501(c)(3), so we don't
Mhm.
advocate for parties or candidates or anything like that.
Right.
But one thing I can say is that black women might be the highest Democratic voting bloc in the country, and then the
Mhm.
second highest Democratic voting bloc in the country is black men. So
Mhm.
over an 85% turnout rate for, I mean, not turnout rate, but actual vote participation rate for Democratic
Mhm.
candidates compared to Republican or Libertarian or third party candidates. So, I mean, yes, the turnout isn't as high as black women, but
Mhm.
that's why BMI came into existence. We want to make sure that we're connecting brothers and then make changing the conversation and the discussion as isn't as to why black men aren't turning out, but what can we do to actually encourage black men to turn out? Are you
Mhm.
actually addressing issues and needs that they feel are important that make them want to turn out? If we're not part of the policy discussion, again, if someone's voted in the past 4 or 6 years, they feel like nothing in their life has changed or it hasn't benefited them, then why are they still going out, and putting forth that effort, waiting in line 6, 7 hours? So, of course, we're activists. We think differently about the situation. We vote regardless. However, for somebody who's just trying to make rent or trying to feed their baby or whatever, trying to buy diapers, making sure that that person feels comfortable enough in the process and has enough trust and faith in the process to actually turn out and be involved in the system.
So you just kind of mentioned standing in line, which is a good segue into what I want to talk about next, and that's this. Georgia Senate Bill 202, which has been a thorn in the side of those of us who care about voting rights here in the state. For those of you who are watching this, this is Conversation with Michael Carson. I'm back. We were gone for a minute, but we're back now. I'm here with my guest, Lyndon Waller from Black Male Initiative, Georgia, and we're talking voting tonight. We're only going to be on here for about 10 more minutes, and then we're going to switch over to Instagram. So whatever you don't catch here, make sure you join us on the after show on Instagram. And my handle on Instagram is Michael Carson Jr. It's right. It's not at the bottom of the screen tonight, but it's Michael Carson Jr. on Instagram, and we'll hop over there for a few minutes after this conversation. I want to put up on the screen. I want to add this to the screen. Can you see that on the screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is, and I don't even know if I can scroll, if it'll let me scroll down. Oh yeah, it'll let me go to the next page. So SB 202, after President Trump cried for 4 years about the system is rigged. He was robbed of his election. A number of Republican governors throughout the country and state houses enacted these bills and got these laws put in that impact people's ability to vote. I just want to talk a little bit about a few of these. One of the ones that got big headline was it's illegal to hand out water for people in line. But talk a little bit about how that really isn't as important as some of the other things on the voting access. Like drop boxes are confined to early voting sites. That's huge.
Yep. So 2020, the 2020 election is when we saw a lot of these. The response, the catalyst for these responses, rather. So we saw precincts again, 6+, 7+, 9-hour waits in some locations. So like-minded individuals, organizations, of course, went to go support people in line, giving them food and waters. But again, that isn't the biggest thing. That's what got the most headline, most the headwind. But again, we want to prevent lines in general. And one thing that actually helped with preventing lines is having drop boxes and accessible absentee ballot applications and making sure people receive their absentee ballot. So by them changing drop boxes, so back in 2020 when they were first introduced, counties could have as many as they wanted. I don't believe they were all required to have one at first because it was just a new thing that came up during the pandemic. But you can have as many as you wanted. They can be outside. They didn't have to be inside. The only requirement was that they had to be bolted down into the ground, or they had to be immovable and under 24-hour surveillance. Like it didn't have to be like an actual cop or a person. It could be under a video feed. So now the change is that, again, drop boxes are confined to early voting sites and only during the hours that site is open. So if you have an early voting site that is open from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, you only have access to that drop box during those hours. You can no longer drop absentee ballots into those drop boxes on the Monday or Tuesday leading up to the election. So the last Friday of early voting, that's the last day that you can use those drop boxes. So let's say you get your ballot in the mail that Saturday, and you have to have it into your elections office by Tuesday before 7 p.m.
Wow.
So now you're rushing, you know how the USPS is now. So now you're in a situation where, do I risk, mailing it in and not getting counted? Or do I go to the polls and try to vote, not knowing what my schedule is going to be like or not knowing what the line is going to be like on election day? So that was huge. The changes to absentee ballot applications was big, but it's not as big as we thought it was going to be, or it's not as much of an issue or a hindrance. Initially, as long as you have a Georgia driver's license or ID, you don't necessarily have to include a copy of that. You just need to put the number on the application. For individuals who don't have those forms of identification, they then have the onus of actually making a copy to include with the application and when they submit their ballot back in.
Yeah, the provisional ballot one, I think, is a huge one also. If
Yeah,
you're in the wrong precinct, especially because
yeah,
we just had all of these redrawn maps, so people might not know.
right,
They might be confused. That's why it's
yeah.
important if you're my voter page here in Georgia. If you're go on that website, put in your information, it'll tell you exactly where you need to go.
Hmm.
But that provisional ballot cast in the wrong, they won't even it won't even be counted
They
anymore.
won't even issue one until after 5 p.m. And then you have to swear an affidavit that states, yes, I'm not able to make it to my regular polling place. So, yeah, but provisional ballots are huge.
Yeah,
Um,
and the county election boards can be replaced by state officials. So if state officials decide we don't like what's going on, or we can
or we don't
arbitrarily
like how
say,
you're verifying or approving ballots,
right,
we can uproot you.
right,
So we saw like a situation that's going on currently in Lincoln County, Georgia, where they're trying to close all 7 of their precincts and consolidate it just to one location. And this isn't a small county. It takes you like 30 minutes to get from one end just to the center of the county. So just imagine, you having to drive an hour overall to go vote, not even factoring in how long voting times will be at the precinct. So yeah.
so poll watchers gain more access to ballot counting. What is it? Just giving them more responsibilities, or what does that mean?
I think there were situations, especially after the 2020 election, when they were going back in and trying to make sure that nothing illegal was occurring in some of these counties, but and they're just giving them a stated legal position to actually be there for the entire time of the counting process, rather than them trying to bum rush into certain locations like we saw in Savannah. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I wanted to put SB 202 up because I think so much so much in the state. People have talked about it so much here in the state, but I haven't seen a lot of strategies on how to just help to educate people and get them through it. I mean, it is law. So
mhm.
we have elections coming up, we have a primary coming up, and we have general election coming up in November. So it is a law. So what are we doing with respect to BMI, and what are you doing with respect to the organization, the People's Agenda you work with during the day? What are we doing to help make sure people understand what it is they ought to do, and how they ought to engage this process in light of SB 202?
Yeah, so the people's agenda, excuse me, our main thing is ensuring that you're vote ready. So we've been running a campaign since early 2020, well, late 2020, early 2021. Are you vote ready? So ensuring that you have the proper identification, your registration is up to date, so you're at the correct polling place, so you don't have to worry about going somewhere that you're not going to end up having a ballot that counts. Making sure that you're prepared for possibly a long wait at the polls, because we're not going to be able to helicopter in and give you pizza and water while you wait. So just situations like that, making sure that we're doing enough awareness and outreach before elections and before registration deadlines to ensure that folks are prepared and ready to go for whatever election. So we've been doing outreach, of course, at schools, senior homes, churches, literally wherever we can go, wherever they allow us in, we're coming in, and we're spreading the word.
If people wanted to volunteer to say, you know what, I'm registered, I'm concerned, I want to register people to vote, or I want to make sure the seniors have access to absentee ballots, or how can I help? How can I get involved? What would you say to them?
Just email me, lwaller@bmigeorgia.org, and that's Georgia spelled out, or lwaller@thepeoplesagenda.org. We need as many people as we can get. This fight isn't over, so we know that we got a lot of work on our hands still.
Yeah, so talk a little bit about, and then we'll close out with this. Talk a little bit about what BMI's biggest wins have been thus far, and what our biggest challenges are with respect to civic engagement.
I think we've done a lot of work in changing the narrative so far. The past,
Mhm.
well, dang, 4 years that we've been in existence, just showing up, making sure that our voices are heard, our people are and communities are represented, and showing that we are here to make an impact. This wasn't just a one-time or a fluke deal. We're here to stay. So I think that's just the biggest thing, changing the perception and the narrative that was existing about Black men, and then seeing us on doors, at events, being involved with making sure that politicians are doing what they say they're supposed to be doing or what they're promising to do. So I think that's our biggest win.
What about some challenges that we might have had or we might be facing ahead of us?
Some challenges. I mean, I don't think it's anything Black man can't handle, but just being
I hear
honest.
you. I hear you.
Yeah, I don't think, especially under the leadership of John and
Yeah.
fine gentlemen like yourself and Drew and David, I don't think it's anything that we can't handle. But just making sure that we're reaching everybody that we can. I think it's just a capacity thing. It's a lot of work to be done, and you can always use more hands. So I think that's the biggest issue.
Well, Lyndon, thank you so much for being on the show tonight.
Thank you, Michael.
We're gonna hop off in a minute and hop on Instagram for about 10 minutes or so. So for those of you that are watching us, make sure that you go over to Instagram. I have a couple more questions I didn't ask him that I'm gonna ask him over there that are important to the conversation. But you've been tuned in to Conversations with Michael Carson. Make sure that you register to vote. Make sure your voting status is up to par. Make sure that you haven't been purged from the rolls. And if you want to volunteer, make sure you follow us on Facebook, BMI Georgia, Black Male Initiative Georgia. Our site will be up soon, right? Because I checked, it wasn't. Our site is almost up.
I think it's supposed to launch tomorrow or sometime this weekend, I believe.
Yeah, so it'll be Black Male Initiative Georgia.org. .org. Yeah, where you can find out what we're doing, how you can contribute, how you can volunteer. I know we, as Lyndon said, we need people to get engaged and be engaged. We do have 5 pillars. So we have civic engagement, criminal justice, financial literacy, education, and health. So if you want to volunteer, you want to get involved in any one of those pillars, again, civic engagement, criminal justice, financial literacy, education, and health, make sure that you reach out to me or reach out to Lyndon, and then we can connect you to BMI so that you can stay engaged. And I'm just excited about being a part of the organization and what we represent and how we represent the community. And again, it's thanks to Lyndon's leadership, thanks to John Taylor's leadership, and all the people that are working day to day to make sure they get out and get the word out and canvas and do all the other stuff that we're doing. So I'm proud of the work we're doing. I'm looking forward to even better 2022. So thank you, man, for joining us.
Thank you.
And again, hop on over to Conversations with Michael Carson. We're going to sign off. Hop over to the after show. Check us out. Tune in. We won't be back next week. I want to say this. We'll most likely be doing shows every 2 weeks because, as you saw, maybe in the opening, I am running for state senate for District 38. So shameless plug. It's my show. I can plug myself. So I want to make sure that that you see this. I am running for state senate for Georgia's District 38. Make sure you check the website out. Check me out. We need volunteers and donations as well. So do that. So until next time, continue blessings, and we'll see you on the after show. Thank you for tuning into Conversations with Michael Carson. Join us here each Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for engaging and insightful conversations. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you have not already done so, don't forget to click the share button on Facebook and the subscribe button on YouTube. The conversation doesn't stop here. Head over to Instagram and join us on Michael Carson Jr. starting shortly. See you soon, and until next time, continue blessings.